Hurock Park in Flat Rock. And so from the Ralph C. Wilson Jr. And I'll just walk you through a little. Our project that we've been working that I'm going to talk about today, both that are most relevant to Grosse Ile and our future plans.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you everyone for being here. Thank you everyone for being here. So we do have an agenda. I'm not sure if you were able to view it online ahead of time. But if you did have questions about the agenda, we should be able to add things or restrict things from the agenda. If not, I'd like to make a motion to approve it as follows.
Seconded.
All right. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, everyone. Next item on the agenda would be approval of the meeting minutes. So I know at the last meeting I was not there, but Christine and Carl and Wes were in attendance. And so that was March 31st. I did review the minutes, and I know that as far as actions that we were looking to accomplish, that seemed to be okay. But if anyone else has comments specifically on those meeting minutes, please do so now. Hearing none, make a motion to approve the meeting minutes.
So moved.
We have a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you, everyone. Now it'll be time for public comment. If there's anyone in the public that would like to say anything that's unrelated to the agenda, I'd be happy to have you come up.
Pretty big crowd.
It is. Gonna have to fight them off here tonight. But we do have folks, so that's good. So we'll close public comment, and we'll go right into updates. And first of all, I want to welcome Trustee Yeager as our Township Liaison.
Thank you.
Mr. Yeager, happy to have you over here. Would you like to say a few words before we get into the rest of the agenda?
Yeah, I didn't prepare any remarks, but I'm excited to be on BPAC. I use the trails all the time. My kids do. I actually moved here after running the Grosse Ile half marathon and seeing how beautiful it was and how many recreational opportunities there was. So this was one of the commissions I was excited about when I ran, and I'm excited to be here now. So I actually rode my bike here. So
Awesome.
wanted to check the trail on the way.
Good stuff. So thinking that the rest of us over here, we can do introductions as well for Jameson, so that way he knows us a little bit better. Again, I know it's been a while since we've been on the air, so there might be some people that even forget about who's been on the commission, especially since we do have newer members. So, Wes, would you like to begin?
Jameson, I'm Wes Pfeiffer.
How are you, sir?
Good.
I'm Christine Ridlicki, and I'm the
Meet you.
secretary.
And Jameson, I just want to add that my backstory is that I was actually working at SEMCOG. I was starting over there. I was doing some analysis, looking at road characteristics that made for more bicycle-friendly communities. And so it's like, I was living in Wyandotte at the time, and just for all of Wayne County, we see the sea of red in regarding like traffic volumes and lack of space for people biking, and then higher traffic speeds. And then all of a sudden, there's both a literal and metaphorical island where like everything seemed to be perfect from that standpoint. It was like, I live like 2 miles away from here, and I've never actually really been out there. I need to check this out a little bit more. And so I did a little more research, and we had been looking to potentially move at that time. So I was like, okay, well, wanted to be close to nature. We'll check with the open space. Wanted to have access and have a relationship with the water. Being on an island, you definitely have that. Good schools, and then on top of it, with the walkability and bikeability of the area, I was like, okay, this looks good. So we found a home in the center of the island on Knudsen, where it's one of the few subdivisions that has a full sidewalk network where you'll be able to walk to school or walk to church. So that's my backstory with the commission.
Kindred
from that
spirits.
standpoint. Yeah, moved here, and then very shortly afterwards, I got a call for technical assistance, and it was people working on a subcommittee of the DPS where they're looking to do bike paths, and they said, "Hey, can you help out?" I was like, "Well, depends where you live. I'm part of a organization that helps out member communities." And like, "Where do you live?" Groseal. "Oh, okay. I just moved here," and so I found out about that, and they just pulled me on in, and so I've been a part of that ever since. So pretty much since I moved here.
So you've been a part of BPAC since its inception, then?
Yes.
So you're a founding father.
I am, in that
Okay.
standpoint. Alan Valaquette is as well, and I know he's not here tonight because some of his family has COVID, so he's been exposed, and so he's doing us all a favor by staying home. But I know Alan said he is watching tonight, so happy to see you, Alan. So myself and Eric Rinka, we're some of the folks that started it. We were doing that DPS committee, and we started to move forward with trying to put something on East River. That failed. Same time, the safe routes to school, with the sidewalks in the area, that was kind of blowing up. It's like, well, we need to really do some more public outreach, and be a little more holistic as far as what we're trying to accomplish. Because I know one of the things that we worked on when we were a part of this DPS committee is like, well, we want something on Church. It's like, well, we can't fit a bike path over there. Like, well, it needs a sidewalk. But we're not charged with doing anything with sidewalks. Oh, there's other areas that maybe we want a wide paved shoulder or something. It's like, well, you can't do that either if if your charge is just specifically about bike paths. So that's how I approached Eric Ranka and said, hey, we should have something that's televised and be more grassroots and be all things bike ped related. And he's like, I like it. And
So
since
that's
I
where
volunteered,
the end Pedestrian came in.
yeah.
Okay.
So with that, I have a few slides here that covers some of the stuff we were already talking about. The Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission, or BPAC, was established, around 2012. That's, we were doing stuff a little bit earlier than that, but I know we had meetings officially happening and starting our work in 2012. And again, it's more about a one-stop shop for all things walking and biking. Maybe we weren't actually in control of it, but we would be, figuring out what to do and how to actually, coordinate with others. And it's this outgrowth of the DPS commission, but we started working with recreation. We're working with the downtown development association and others. And so while we're directly responsible for the planning and maintenance of the bike paths, we want to have those recommendations and coordinations with other commissions. So that way we're able to look at sidewalks, trails, wide paved shoulders, bike lanes, work with the schools, work with recreation, programming. Just again, try to like be more holistic with everything associated with that and televise it and get people excited to be a part of it and potentially help out as well. So this is just, a list of, some of the past successes. The first feather in our hat was, planning and building the horse mill bike path, which, again, we wanted to be able to build something that, could be utilize some of those funds that had been sitting around, and like we knew that, that would connect into the bird, wildlife sanctuary. So we were able to, work on that. We've been doing site selection and material selection for benches and fountains and such. And related to that, we did a partnership with the Roadrunners of Groseal involving siting a fountain over at Grow Road, right across from Township Hall over here. And so we're able to develop one that had the the doggy bowl for pets along that area, and we had to think creatively in how to fundraise and be able to while we had the donation of the actual fountain, we needed the cost to actually install it and the maintenance, and so we did the brick fundraiser and we were able to get that put in place. Alan, who's not here tonight, he led spearheaded our Promoting Active Communities application, which is a designation from the state of Michigan in regarding being a healthy community and being active. And so you go through all of the township legislation and departments and learn about that stuff, fill it out. And so 2 years in a row, we had the bronze status for that while that program was around. In the past, we worked with DPS and the township board in order to institute a complete streets resolution. That's the thought behind that is whenever you're doing infrastructure and something that affects the streets, you think, well, how does it affect people walking and biking, and is there the possibility of synergies, and in order to again promote more people to be walking and biking from that standpoint. We also used to have a person that was like really involved with encouragement activities. So we did our own. We did a partnership with. Why am I forgetting the name of it? Rotary Club with for the glow rolls. So at night, I'm not sure if you were here then, but
Yeah, I remember them. They were cool.
we did lazy rides on Saturdays. We had events like Walk the Path, where encourage people to walk the path, meet up at Macomb, and had hot dogs and music. Each year we do Walk to School Day and Bike to School Day in partnership with the schools and the parent groups. In the past, we also worked with Rotary on Tour de Eel. We also were able to get a grant from SEMCOG in order to do bicycle safety education campaign, and so we were able to buy bike lights and give those over to the police department in order to issue out to people that are biking at night, and let them know it's like, hey, by law, if you're going to be riding at night, you should be using a white light in front, and at the very least have a red reflector on back, but giving something for people to get safe passage home and to, again, encourage people to be safe while riding at night. Another thing that in the past we did was more creation of tourism information or brochures. So this is a snapshot of a trifold that we had. So if you see over here on the right, that's the part that you would see if you're looking directly at the document, and that would be put inside the Michigan Welcome Center and other places. You could open it up, and on the back it said something about Groseal as far as the bike paths and the nature trails, about our open space and different facilities.
Is that still a program they're doing?
Oh, we did this all out of pocket
Oh,
ourselves.
really? Out of your pockets or out of like the BPACs?
Well, BPAC doesn't have much of a budget. So the only budget we actually have is directly for the funding maintenance of the trails. Okay. Everything else, we have to either find a grant or we have to figure out a way to publish it. And so we had, I believe, a few donations here or there, because we used to have we had meetings. We'd have booths out at some of these events that we're at, and we'd be up at Island Fest, and we did public outreach about where people would like to see facilities in the future and provide additional information. So I can't recall like how much money it actually cost to run these. I could talk to the individuals that actually produce them, but it was a group effort to try and figure out what type of content to put on there and have that balance between being something specific for biking, but also be something more about just Groseal in general. It's like that's what our goal was with that brochure. And I know that the realtors were really interested in it. They requested those materials, and we were trying to reach out to others in the township to help us with the funding, and they'd say, well, hey, that's a BPAC thing, you guys figure out how to fund it.
Okay. Well, we can talk about that some more.
Cool.
The funding at least. So.
Yeah. I should say that both Jane Fiegel and Robert Firmstone, former members of BPAC, they were instrumental with creating this. So on the inside, it had some more information about some of the different things that you could visit, some of the events, and then you also could open it up, and it would be a map of Groseal showing where we had our shared use paths, or our bike paths, as well as different trail amenities and the points of interest. So this is a little bit easier to see, the top end, so you can see like where there was bridges to get to Groseal, where there was official bike paths, where there was the Macomb Street sidewalks and the open space, and then here's some of the points of interest.
Pretty comprehensive.
Yeah, we're pretty proud of that. So moving forward into what we're doing now is that obviously you probably know a little bit about the path maintenance and restoration. So we redid the Grow Road Bridge. We redecked that, and that was part of a grant that we were able to obtain from the Community Foundation for Southeast Michigan about trail maintenance. And so we were able to stretch our dollars in order to do that redecking, as well as do some additional pathway maintenance, which should be happening in the next week or so. I know I've got the text messages from the township saying that the construction has started. I haven't seen it in my part, my drive, but I know it should be starting soon. So additionally, we stained the Meridian bridge, across from Meridian Elementary. We had in the past done some significant work on redoing that bridge because it was near the end of its life. The one that we have left is over the Thoroughfare Canal, and while that one is in pretty bad shape, the reason why we waited on that is we knew that there was some road work that was going to be happening on Meridian that would potentially affect that bridge, and so we wanted to see. We didn't want to throw good money at a project and then all of a sudden get it ripped up as part of that road project. So I believe that Wayne County is going to help put some money into parts of that bridge, so we shouldn't have to fund that full thing ourselves. So another thing that we do is look at the maintenance and the vegetation. So you should be clearing the paths and make sure that it's good enough for people not only walking, but if you're on a bike and you're 6 foot tall, well, you need a little more clearance as far as making sure that those branches aren't hitting you in the face.
So do you guys, as far as obstacle clearing on the foliage sticking onto the trail, do you guys reference or liaison with like DPS to have that done?
We do.
Okay.
Yeah. So John Keim has been instrumental in taking care of a lot of the general maintenance. So like all of the sweeping, all of the a lot of the mowing that's done through DPS, and John does a lot of that, and he's eyes out on the path as well to let us know, hey, maybe we should consider this or that. But we don't specifically go do the work ourselves, but we're the planning body associated with that. I know that there was another person that just retired from Groseal that was going to be helping us lead with some of that, some of the big branches and brush as far as the maintenance, and so that's why we're a little bit behind there. But I think that's something that we'll want to make sure that we stay on top of, because it's been a little while since we've trimmed up the vegetation along the path. So this is, just a shot of the Meridian Bridge that I was talking about before. By the way, if you're not familiar with this, my company that I work for, SEMCOG, we have an app called Trail Explorer. And so any of the trails in Southeast Michigan that are, part of a regional network, we contracted with another vendor in order to do this, basically Google Street Maps for the trails.
That's cool.
So our trails, the Meridian Path is a part of that, as well as the Thoroughfare Canal for the water trail side, and the east and west sides of the island as well. So it's a pretty cool tool to go out there and plan one of your trips. I know around here for us, kind of know it as far as Grosse Ile, but if we go up to Harrison Township or out to Livingston County or down to Monroe, we might not be as familiar with it. So this tool can be used in order to plan your trips. So hopefully people that are coming to Grosse Ile could be using that as well. So this slide over here represents the existing system as well as some of the planning projects that we've been talking about over the years. So the blue is the existing bike paths. So we have the Horse Mill one that I talked about before, Meridian starting just north of Bridge Road at I believe at Voight, and heading southbound, Grow Road and South Point, as well as the path along the Meridian Elementary going over to the soccer fields. And depending on who you talk to, and we've had put previous maintenance funds into the path in between the high school and the middle school, back by the softball fields. So that's the existing system. We are currently looking at a couple different projects. The darker reds over here are active projects. So we are looking at connecting down to the wildlife refuge, and we'll have more information on that shortly, as well as we are trying to connect to the Grosse Ile Free Bridge and connect to Water's Edge and the Country Club in order to work with Trenton on connecting into the Downriver Link Greenway system. Again, we'll have a presentation on that shortly.
Yeah, I remember there being some debate about that on the board. So you guys are we're re-engaging about that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, good.
Definitely. And then these stars over here represent crossings of the bike path along the road. So I know right at Ferry, that's number one. We're actively working with Wayne County in order to increase the safety at that location. Hopefully, along with the construction of the bridge over the Thoroughfare Canal, that intersection is going to be redesigned and it's going to be safer for people walking and biking. But long term, we'd also like to be able to have safer crossings down at Meridian Elementary, at Church Road, and then up just north of Horse Mill. Anywhere where you're going to have unsignalized crossing, that's where we want to focus our efforts. But starting where we probably see the most traffic, and then going down from there. The light shaded red, just say that East River is always on our mind. It's probably the single hardest project in all of Grosse Ile, and it probably needs consistent public outreach and probably over a 10 or 15 year period or something in order to actually happen. Maybe we could truncate that down, but the point is that it's something that we would love to do, but there's a lot of challenges, and that's why it has not been done as of yet.
So what's the commission's vision on the East River project? Like a actual bike path or a sharrow, an extended shoulder?
Yeah, I think that we would want to work with the local property owners to see what we could actually get. Because obviously the best thing would be is to actually have some form of separation between the traffic. And so could you do, without actually obtaining right of way, there's no way that we could do a full bike path. That was one of the things that was a challenge for us when we tried doing this again, over 10 years ago. is that, you would need to do right-of-way, or you'd need to have guardrail put up along the area, or you might actually have to put boardwalk or, fill in, so there's a lot of challenges from that. But, maybe you could get by with a sidewalk, and, maybe the property owners would be okay with, having it on, the trouble is that the right-of-way is on the east side of the road.
The lakeside.
Yeah, the lake side. And, understandably, residents might be a little uncomfortable, having people over there. I mean, everything new, you have potential uneasiness about it. But so I understand that from that standpoint. Maybe they would feel more comfortable if it was on the west side, but that's where we don't have the right of way in order to do that. So, those are two options completely out of the right of way. And then what's probably more feasible is, wide paved shoulders, or like a combination of that and, sharrows, depending on, the local road itself. So like in certain areas where you're going uphill, well, you probably want more of a wide paved shoulder. Where you're going downhill, maybe you feel more comfortable being in a sharrow if you don't have space for both of them. I think we need to be very creative and context sensitive. And so that requires, a lot of thought and engineering and public outreach. So that's why we're always kind of kicking that can down the road and saying that this is something that we would like to do, but, as of right now, that the timing isn't exactly right for it. The other aspect is with the ferry related to ferry. So you may recall that we used to have the ferry trail that would run from Gage on the north side, and basically follow right along the thoroughfare canal and come out very close to Lowry, right at Ferry. And that was an informal trail that we never actually owned that property, and I'm not blaming anyone for that, but just it's that trail went away. And so Open Space has done a great job of establishing a new trail and working with the property owner, but the new trail opening is basically halfway between Meridian and Park Lane. And so if we want that to have any transportation value, to be able to get people to the bike path or get them to the middle school or any of those other areas, we'll probably want to look at something along Ferry Road in order to make it a little safer, because the shoulders aren't very wide in that area, and
That's
it's
a
pretty
tough
straight.
road.
Yeah. And then it would also be nice to be able to connect to Sunrise Park. So as far as making that East River connection over that way, and if it made sense, maybe you could see something on Groseal Parkway. But that's, I think, the least of our concerns at that point, if we're able to get East River itself.
Sure.
So there's a few other ones along the way. I know that we've talked about doing something on Anderson, as far as there's an informal connection between Anderson, which is just south of Church Road. It's a dead end road, but there's a road end that connects into thoroughfare. And so
Yeah, the kids take it.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I know.
So
what
like
you're talking about.
I know that there's a person going back to when this was a subset of the DPS there, Jack Delphi's like, hey, we got to do that, because that's where people are currently going, and you have better sight distance when you're trying to cross Meridian at that location. And so that could be a possibility, but if we could get something on Church instead and finish up the sidewalk. So take the sidewalk from thoroughfare to Church Road, and be able to make a crossing over to the church on the west side of Meridian. That would be helpful from that standpoint. And if you did a signal there, then possibly the Anderson cut isn't needed anymore. So there's a variety of different things, and it's all been back of the envelope, or we've worked with recreation in order to put some of this like in the recreation master plan, but we do not have a full-fledged bicycle and pedestrian plan that outlines exactly what we'd like to do, a timeline, costs associated with those, and developing a capital maintenance plan and things of that nature, which is all things that we could do if like we really got coordinated. And I think it would be very helpful if like we're trying to sell to the public, like the need for additional funds is like, well, this is what we're actually going to do with it. And we're going to leverage, those funds in order, with grants or other resources in order to, get the most bang for the buck. I mentioned Meridian Road already at Ferry. So Gibraltar Bay. So there's a couple different names that we can talk about this. The point is that, as I mentioned before, we have a bike path that goes down Meridian, comes to Grow Road. You can go west over to South Point, or you can go east and head to East River, but then it dead ends. And we have the Detroit International Wildlife Refuge down here, which it'd be great to be able to walk or bike to. The road itself, East River, it's ridden with potholes. I know on one of our glow rolls, we had somewhat an accident that happened because someone had flipped over the bike, and because of all those potholes. Hopefully those have been filled since then. But the point is that it's not a great surface to begin with, and people are speeding through this area. And unless you're a fearless bike rider, you probably don't like to to go down this road that often.
So that project seems kind of pseudo achievable, given the property owner is the government.
It is. So yeah,
it's a matter of being able to fund it.
Yeah. So in the past, I worked with Supervisor Loftus in order to try and get a federal land access program, or FLAP grant. It was turned down. I think part of it was we didn't sell it as much as like what it actually can connect to as far as the long term. They just saw like the local connectivity. But since then, I've worked with our new township manager, Derek Thiel, worked with John Hartig, formerly of the Wildlife Refuge and part of the Friends of the Detroit River, and trustee Carl Blocher. The four of us worked together on a grant application with the Community Foundation, and we were able to secure $40,000 in order to potentially make this happen. We also got a very generous donation from the buyer's family that would help cover some of those matching costs associated with that.
Okay.
So as far as we understand, we are ready to go as far as scoping out this project. I believe there was a meeting this past Wednesday, so yesterday, where the township talked to potential vendors about the project, which would consist of moving the fence along the airport property in order to allow for this this gravel road to be used as a primitive trail in order to connect into the Detroit International Wildlife Refuge.
Okay.
So I hope to have more information on the actual, direct cost for that and those bids, like within I'm guessing probably within the next week or two. And we'll find out, are we solvent on this project, or do we need to get creative and, look for additional funding? I should state that our past township manager, Dale Ream, had made a determination that we could use bike path funds in order to help fill a gap, financial gap within there. But given how little we have, we want to be wise with that and use that as a last resort.
Sure.
Is there any questions, comments? No, I'm talking a lot over here.
I'd be interested to know the result of that analysis that you do, as to what percentage of funding we've achieved for that project. And I think it's smart to use the gravel road that's already there.
Mm-hmm.
That's a clever, it's a financially responsible move. So
Yeah. And I'm very happy that it sounds like the airport property is while it would be a lease, like it's not, we don't own the property outright ourselves in perpetuity. That they're okay with it being used, primarily as the a bike path. I know in the past when we first started these conversations, it would be more of a hybrid where, at least a couple times a day that they would be, riding trucks over that area in order to do their security grounds, and like that kind of made it less eligible for other, federal and state pots of funds. So down the road, if this is wildly popular, I'm gonna say like, hey, we really want to be able to, make this more accessible to everyone, and do it as asphalt. If it's truly just for people walking and biking, we might be able to do that.
Okay.
Say we are working with the Grosio Land Conservancy with this as well. So there is a lot of partners involved, and I think that's the way that planning and government should happen. Is that the more the merrier from that standpoint, and try to find consensus and economies of scale together. So the other project is, again, we could use different names. I'm using the Bellevue Connector because that's primarily along Bellevue. And I'll gear up a presentation here shortly. But the point is that, we would be able to connect our existing bike path system at Meridian and Bellevue and be able to have a sidewalk along Bellevue. And be able to connect both to the country club, connect to Water's Edge, wrap around down to West River, and connect into the existing sidewalk at the West River connector that goes up to the Grosio Parkway. And there's that sidewalk wraps all the way around. So while we don't know we obviously can't put a full bike path on the Grosio Free Bridge right now. We all know that there has, weight limitations. At least it would be something for right now. People do walk and, bike across there already. And then, as I think I mentioned before, on the other side of the Free Bridge, Trenton will be working to put in a shared use path or a bike path that will connect up to Jefferson. So let's see what time we got here. It's 8:20. I know we have a 17-minute video or so from Mary Bowling from the Downriver Link Greenways. If everyone's interested in viewing that, we can view that now, or I can send out a link later on, depending on what our schedules are like.
If you want to send out the link, I'll share it on Facebook so people can check it out too. So then everybody can see it.
Okay. So yeah, for the time, we'll send it out. But I guess since Jameson, you were asking about it earlier, and that you've seen some parts of this new presentation at with the township, the issue came up because originally we're looking to try and do a full shared use path along all of Bellevue. So basically starting from West River and going to Meridian, we'd be able to have a shared use path. There's an issue with the right-of-way where we would need temporary construction easements along the Grosio Golf and Country Club property. It wouldn't be a full easement like you need it, into perpetuity. It would only be for the time period where the construction was taking place. And it was a matter of feet. It wasn't hundreds of feet that they needed for an easement. But point being that I know that the Grosio Golf and Country Club said, do what you want within the right of way, but please do not come an inch onto our property. So with that, the Downriver Link Greenways and their consultant went back and did a sidewalk option. So from my understanding, it will be shared use path along West River and along the Bellevue up into the Golf and Country Club. At that point, it will become a sidewalk, and so that way it will stay completely within the road right of way. And be
Surprised they wouldn't work with us at all.
Yeah, I would love it if they would be able to work with us, because I think it would be best for everybody, all parties involved. But we didn't get a chance to really talk with them personally. I know the information was conveyed to their board.
Okay.
But as of right now, the design phase of the project has been closed out.
Yeah,
So
it's already.
yeah,
Okay.
Downriver Link Greenways was able to coordinate with Wayne County in order to get the okay, basically a blessing. It's not completely done yet, but at least the introduction about like what permits would be needed in order to make this project happen. And they said that, nothing looks bad from that standpoint. And so they should be able to move ahead with that when they get funding. The Downriver Link Greenways was able to get a Ralph C. Wilson grant that covers, I believe, roughly 1/3 of the cost of all of the gaps. So this is one gap of many within the Downriver Link Greenways area. But once complete with this gap assessment, you'll have continuous sidewalk or shared use path along with some bike lanes in certain sections from Flat Rock all the way up the Jefferson corridor to the city of Detroit.
Oh, that's awesome.
So yeah, it's like I wish them luck as far as trying to obtain the other funding from that standpoint. I think it's a good project, and so their luck is our luck from that standpoint because they're trying to fund this so that way there's again minimal if any direct contributions from the township on this. So I will send out that link so you'll be able to view that the presentation. But basically at this point, I believe that BPAC would need to be comfortable with recommending to the township board that the township board do a resolution in support of the project. So that way they know that they're not throwing good money after bad as far as trying to implement this project.
Okay. Is there a deadline for what's happening here? Is there you got to have
I don't know of a
something
direct
by
deadline.
some time?
I think the sooner the better because they're shopping around for those for the remainder of the funds, and if they get that and we haven't signed off and we're still not comfortable, well, they're going to do everything but our stuff. So we'll lose out on that opportunity.
You're not looking for a resolution of support from the board, which would just be like a non-binding, hey, we think this is a good idea. You're looking for the board to actually approve this project.
I will need to look at the exact language.
Okay.
I asked Mary, but and by the way, Mary would love to be here tonight, but she has a conflicting meeting, so that's why she did this recording instead. And so, I was asking her, well, what do you specifically need from us? And, I just threw out some language. It's like, yeah, pretty much that. But I would like to get something more formal in writing. Like, okay, what
Would you ask her
need?
specifically what we need, and then we can do a resolution making a recommendation to the board, and then I can bring it before the board.
Yeah.
Because I think that's a game changer, right? I like to ride out across a bridge every once in a while, and trying to go down Parkway, you're either gonna ride 35 miles per hour or you're gonna be riding right next to cars. So, and I definitely can't ride 35 miles an hour. So,
I should say that over the past 3 or 4 years, we've done some public outreach because we started off looking at Parkway as a potential option. So like there was an option where you could go along the north side of Groseal Parkway. There was an option to be on the south side of Groseal Parkway. There was an option where it's a shared use path that goes in and connects over the the wetlands in this area and utilizes this utility easement. And the meeting that we had with the residents in this area, they said, hey, we have enough problems with the high traffic on Groseal Parkway. We can't really utilize our front yards that much. We really would appreciate if you don't do anything in the backyards because then we don't have any privacy from that standpoint. So we felt that between that and the costs associated with doing that project and not having a good termini or tie-in to the existing spine along Meridian, that one was kind of out of the question. And then they didn't want something in their front yard, and then there was a lot of costs, and we'd still be dealing with the country club if we were on the south side over here. And so we were looked at different options. At one point, we were hopeful that we would have been able to do a road, a lane repurposing along Bellevue in order to utilize part of that road as as a shared use path. But again, doing public outreach, Water's Edge and the Country Club, I don't think we're that supportive from that model. And then we would have had to convince Wayne County, and Wayne County at first said, it's your road, go ahead and do what you want. That's why we're like, well, maybe we can do this. And then we found out, oh no, their paperwork was wrong, someone was mistaken.
Their road.
Yeah, it's their road. So just to let you know that this has gone through a lot of iterations already too. So it's been something that we've been working on for multiple years.
Well, give me the info.
All right.
Go from there.
I should mention as well is that as part of this whole Downriver Link Greenway system, they're looking at wayfinding signage. So there will be a few signs and pavement markings that will be done complimentary as like part of the grant that they do. Basically saying, oh hey, turn this way to go to Water's Edge, and stay along the Downriver Link Greenways. This way to connect into Macomb Street. But there's additional signage that we could purchase if we would like that. There's a lot of different amenities that you could purchase that, again, they're very nice. I'm not saying no to them, not saying yes either. It's just something that we should probably think about as we're moving forward with planning and implementation. So this slide here just shows some of the other things that are on our plate or we've been thinking about. So I mentioned about those safety crossings, Meridian, Church Road Sidewalk, Anderson, East River, Park Lane South. So that would be like being able to tie in from the Macomb Street district to Centennial Farm. So having something, again, not dictating, oh, it needs to be a bike path, but providing some sort of connectivity so people don't have to be in the street for parts of that where there is no sidewalk. Another large item that we've been looking at in some capacity is about sign improvements. So if you go out on any of our roads, you will see different signs that say bike crossing or bike route. You'll see some places we have stop signs on the bike path as you're going across the street. Other places we have nothing. We were looking to try and be more consistent because the bike path system was built over decades and it had different engineers and different standards, and sometimes things would, maybe there was a storm or there was a crash and something wasn't replaced. But point is, it's all a little bit different now. And could we go through and be able to look at these signs and say, one, is it needed? Because signs can be clutter. We want to minimize them if they're not needed. But additionally, we want to make sure that people are doing the right move. There's a saying, but right design invites right use. So a good example would be that of a stop sign. How many people bicycling stop at that stop sign? And so there might be some people that do it, like they're always going to follow the law. There's other people that will, depending on the stop sign, they might stop or they might not. And I'm not trying to blame people biking or people walking, because as drivers we do the same thing. If you're driving along a road in a subdivision, well, how often do you come to a complete full stop at a stop sign, right back before the stop sign, as opposed to kind of float that stop sign and just kind of treat it more as a yield. Point being is, if you look at it and say, well, hey, there's no real need for someone to stop here, maybe there's something else that you can put in place that makes that intersection more conspicuous, and maybe it's a yield sign, maybe it's just some pavement markings of some sort, and reserve those stop signs or some of those more strict regulation for where you actually need it. like if you're crossing Meridian and you don't have a light, that's where you really should stop before actually crossing the road. So there's that aspect of looking at the safety. There's the idea of just minimizing from a clutter, making sure that the signs make sense. And so that's something that we've done in some capacity, but we haven't pulled the trigger on it. I know before Carl left the commission over here, that was one of the things that we were going to try and fast track this year still. The other item that we've been talking about is sidewalks, and that's being that in some areas like my neighborhood, the sidewalks were put in when the subdivision went in the 1960s. We have lots of tree species that heave some of those sidewalks. Some of them might be at the end of their life, but while it's out of the domain of BPAC as far as funding and replacing those as it currently stands, is there a way that we can figure out how to take care of this and not put the onus completely on the property owner, or have to go out there and write citations and things like that. It's like we don't want to do something of that, but we still want to make it right for people of all ages and abilities. So there's people that have limited visibility and they're using a cane, and that crack in the road, a crack in the sidewalk that could make them fall down, or there's somebody in a wheelchair, or people pushing strollers, and plus again just for good maintenance purposes. So probably last year, Carl, myself, and John Hennessy went out and we walked, and we used a tool just to kind of rate some of the sidewalks in that neighborhood, and we're coming up and floating ideas, and thought, well, hey, maybe there's a way that we could create matching funds and be able to encourage residents to say, like, hey, if you'd really like to be able to replace this section of sidewalk, well, maybe it's 50-50 with the township or something like that. Similar to what we have as far as a drainage fund. So again, that's just one idea, but the point is that we want to be able to continue to think about this and figure out a way to to repair this, because if we don't start thinking about it and keeping it on our plate, it's just going to continue to languish, and it kind of doesn't have a home at the moment. Education encouragement, I mentioned walk to school day and bike to school day. Though walk to school day will be in October. I don't know the exact date. Rebecca Kung, she is on this commission, and she has been instrumental with working with the schools on that. I know Christine has helped out with that in addition. But so that's something that we'll probably be talking about in the next couple months here.
Okay.
That's about it. So I don't know if you have any questions, comments, or if anyone else has questions or comments about those updates.
I think it was a really thorough update. I certainly appreciate getting brought up to speed. I think that you're calling it the Bellevue Connector. I think but I'll just be more broad. The bike paths, walkability, with sidewalks, all that kind of stuff, not only contributes to the health and happiness of residents, right? But that Bellevue Connector can tie us into the rest of the rails and trails system all across the state, and can be kind of a way to generate commerce, right? So there's a couple different numbers I've seen, but about 11,000 people live here, give or take, about 4,000 households, and we've got all these local business owners here that are trying to provide high quality services to us as residents, and could certainly use a boost in June, July, and August when there's people out hitting the trails and swinging through Grosse Ile, grabbing a beer at Airport Inn, going over to Lloyd's and getting a slice of pizza, or stopping by and having some ice cream at the bakery. So I think that that's another way to approach this system that you guys are working on holistically, right? Is that these aren't just bike trails and paths that residents are going to use. These are bike trails and paths that other people might use, right? Maybe, I grew up over on the west side, and my neighbors, we go on a 100-mile bike ride, a couple times a year, and they stay in hotels and bed and breakfasts and things like that. So, I mean, I see it as like a way to move the island in the right direction holistically. So, I definitely think that's a great idea. Yeah, we just got to figure out how to pull it off. So, but other than that, I think that was a great report, and I appreciate you putting it together, Brian. So, thanks.
Thank you, Jameson. Les, Christine, do you have anything that you'd like to mention?
I think we're good.
We had the Fixit station on the agenda. Do we need to talk about it?
I do. Thank you for mentioning that. So another project is a bike Fixit station. So if you're not familiar with those, they're basically a stand that you put along a bike path or along a bike lane, or sometimes you'll see them in downtowns, where you can lift your bike up, rest it, and then be able to change a tire. Or it usually has tools on there, so that way you can tighten up the handlebars, or a variety of different small tasks that you might need to do when, again, maybe you're on a 100-mile bike ride and you don't have your tools with you, but you blew a tire. Well, you might be able to walk it to a repair stand. We've been looking at those for years, and we did have a donation from an Eagle Scout who he was going to do it all himself, and then life caught up with him, and so he wasn't able to complete it himself. But he said, we still want the township to have this, and so we have the bike Fixit station in our possession. We just need to actually install it.
Okay, awesome.
So it would be just coordinating with DPS. I believe we would like to put it over by the police station, because that's probably one of the better trailheads as far as it's right off of Grosio Parkway. It's well monitored from that standpoint. So either right at the public safety building, or over at Macomb Commons, or somewhere in that
that's
area.
a good place for it too, and it's centrally located. Do you need a motion to make that recommendation, or are you guys kind of going about it informally?
We've been going about it informally, and
Okay.
if we need something more,
I don't really know if it's necessary. I just didn't know if you were looking for one. So
Yeah. Again, it's just been that life's caught up with a lot of the commissioners and with township officials, and so it's just.
no, I get it.
I mean,
for sure.
they've got a lot on their plate, so I think it's just more about coordination and making sure it happens.
All right. Well, let's make sure we follow up on that too, then, because that's a cool idea.
What else do I have on there?
Bicycle and pedestrian counters.
Yeah. So in the past, we've done bicycle and pedestrian counts courtesy of my employer at SEMCOG, because we have a count program for across Southeast Michigan. So we're always, trying to look at, short duration counts, and be able to potentially expand those out. But there are communities that install permanent counters. You see them at the metro parks, you see them in Ferndale, Pittsfield Township, Dexter. There's Ferndale. There's a variety of communities that have these, and they're growing. And so they cost roughly around like $3,000 or so to get a permanent one in place. And I thought, again, it might be something nice for us to do. I'm not prescribing a specific location, but I think it would behoove us to think about this. And again, if we're able to identify the funds to install one of those, so that way we have a metric and we can say that, yeah, people are, we generally anecdotally see, people are biking more, or, maybe it's due to this specific infrastructure or this program that we're doing, but
So would
we'd
it
able to
be
quantify it.
with the permanent one that would just be in one spot? You couldn't relocate it to count other locations, right?
It would, so if we install the permanent one, yes. You could also, purchase one that's more mobile. And so you'd be able to say, well, hey, I want to put it at the public safety building today, or another day we're going to do it up by the wildlife sanctuary on Horse Mill. You'd be able to move those around. But there's trade-offs with those.
Sure.
There's batteries that you have to be concerned about. And one of the other things is that depending on the technology that you choose, it might not be able to differentiate between a person walking and biking. I don't know if that's a deal breaker, but that, that's.
But it would be nice to be able to quantify some data, right?
Yeah.
That gives this commission some ammunition, right? Like, listen, I know you don't want to fund this project, but 15,000 people used the Meridian Bike Trail last week.
Yeah.
Which would be
That'd
an
be
astronomically high number.
Yeah.
But at least it gives you a starting point. So that might be a good move too. Okay.
Thank you. So again, all this stuff costs money, and one thing I didn't get into today, which I can say for a different day, is that we have a millage that roughly generates $90,000 a year. So all of the bike paths, as far as the lawn mowing, and the equipment associated with that, the snow removal and the equipment associated with that, the vegetation removal, the staining and repairs to the boardwalks and bridges, and all of the asphalt maintenance, all of that has to do with the $90,000 a year. And so that's unsustainable if we really want to be able to say, well, when the bike path gets to the end of its life, that you can be able to refresh it. And we have a significant amount over here. And then if we want to be able to do all these other improvements and at the very least have matching funds for grants, but sometimes be able to do these alone if we need to, we're going to need to have additional funds.
So when does your current millage expire? Do you know?
I do not remember.
Okay.
I think it's in several years.
Okay, so it's there for a while. So you'd be asking for an additional
Yeah.
0.1 mil, point whatever. Okay.
And that relates back to having that comprehensive bicycle and pedestrian plan. So that way we can say, well, hey, if we get $500,000, and I'm just throwing just a number out there, it's like, well, that's a lot of money. Well, what are you going to do with that? And you can say, oh, well, that's going to, refresh the entire all asphalt, within 10 years, and that's going to add, a bike path along. I'm just saying East River, but it's like, just the point is that you'd be able to justify those costs associated with it.
Yeah, I think like a BPAC master plan and that capital improvement plan and all of that would help out with being able to make those arguments. And I realize that's a massive lift for a unpaid commission with no associated full-time department, right? So, but I don't know, maybe we can get somewhere with it.
Appreciate any guidance that you have in that front. I know that the millage has been talked about for years. We were able to, when we started, I don't believe we had a millage at all, because the millage had sunset, and we went out for a new millage, right around the time that we were doing, trying to get East River, and I believe that failed as well. And so there was a few years where we were just operating on, just what we had brought in over the years, and then we were able to get the millage that we had, which we knew right away it wasn't enough, but it's like that's what the appetite of the board was at that moment, and so it's something is better than nothing.
So I think with millages, there's a couple things to consider. Obviously, there's the financial component of it, but there's also the education of the voter component, right? So you have to be able to inform the voter about it, right? Members of the board can't campaign about it, so it's not like I can go out there and be like, hey, everybody should vote for this millage. So you don't have that kind of support. However, organizations can and things like that can campaign for millages and individuals. And then you've also got to consider what other millages are coming up for renewal, right? Like if you're sitting there and you're like, man, police, fire, I don't know, some kind of sewer millage and bike paths. You know,
Yeah.
you're kind of in a losing position there just because of where you're at on the priority list, you know. So that's something to consider too. But we can talk some more about that. You've gotten a millage approved before. I don't think it's impossible, right? I think residents appreciate bike paths and walkable areas. So
Yeah, and I know part of the timing has to do with making sure, I know that there's certain villages that were special assessments or things of that nature that they're sunsetting. And so waiting for those to be gone before asking the question. So that way, again, there's, some relief to the taxpayer. that we're
yeah,
not
and there
asking
was
them.
a plan put out last month, or maybe it was a couple months ago now, discussing the millages that are up for either, well, we'll just say new millages this year, and how some of them will reduce over time in total tax burden, assuming other millages aren't renewed. So I think probably the best thing to do would just be I can get you that piece of paper, and you can assess that alongside when your own millage sunsets, and maybe come up with a plan of how you might approach that. There may even be a period where millages will, and I'm not big on taxes to begin with. I guess I should preface that, but there could even be a potential point where your two millages overlap, and the fund could be, you could have more than 90,000 for a couple years, right? Depending on if residents support it and things like that. And maybe that is your period of capital improvement, and then it returns back to sustainment. So there's a lot to consider there. Obviously, we probably need to talk about it some more, but I don't think it's impossible.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think we all want to be respectful of the taxpayer, and if there's ways to have efficiencies and ask for less, that's awesome. I just know that, again, we want nice things cost money, and so we have to, as you mentioned, educate the taxpayer and the residents, and let them know what these things cost, and that let them choose.
Yeah, I mean the other option, right, is to get more taxpayers, which is where you start getting into community planning and 20, 30, 50-year master plans. But that's the only way township gets more money, is raise taxes or get more taxpayers, So
So, if you don't have any more questions about that, I know this is your first meeting here, so I assume you don't have much to report on from the township board. But if there's something that you'd like us to
I don't
be
think there
aware
was anything that was impacting this commission's lane at all from the board last month. So, in fact, I think the last time the board discussed something that was related to BPAC was we discussed the Bellevue Connector, but though I think it was a study session and not a vote. So, that's all I got.
My report again. Sorry, I've been doing so much talking, but I just want to mention that as far as grants are concerned, that we can be thinking about Transportation Alternatives Program grants. They are available both from MDOT and SEMCOG, and there's multiple deadlines per year. So that's something that you can be looking at from the SEMCOG side of things. The organization just provided additional emphasis on safety projects, as well as green infrastructure. But trying to be, one part of that safety is shared use path and sidewalk modernization. So again, if you can show project, paths or sidewalks are near the end of their life, and that they're instrumental for connectivity and that people are using them, that could be a potential matching source for funds.
Okay.
Keep in mind that when you go after federal funds, there's federal strings attached to that, so prices can be more, but that can fund up to 80% of eligible items, which are usually the capital only for a project. So it doesn't include engineering costs or some other permits or fees and things, but it can take a big chunk of the cost of a project. Related to that, the deadline just passed, but SEMCOG has been doing, once a year, planning assistance grants. And those can be used to fund a variety of different things. Some communities have used them to fund bicycle and pedestrian plans. So that might be something that we could think about for the future, is again, maybe we can find some sort of grant, whether or not it's, that specific grant, in order to help with, creating a full plan like we have with, the planning department, our planning commission has, the community master plan. Recreation has the community, recreation master plan. We could have something specifically for, that's about walking and biking, and, hits on, education, encouragement, engineering, a variety of different aspects. So, again, another thing to think about. Related to, tourism, again, with my day job, but I also it's like, I wear two hats. I've been involved with Destination Downriver, which is, an organization that's trying to, get people interested in, if they're in the area, exploring downriver, or, maybe even if you live in downriver that you're not familiar with a certain community. So maybe there's new places to eat, new places to recreate, get out on the water and enjoy nature. They are been working with Under the Radar in order to highlight different communities. That's actually where Mary Bowling from the Downriver Link Greenways is at tonight. There's a release party for that video, and so that will be shown soon. So there will be opportunities for us again to potentially leverage that in order to look at the tourism aspects for Groseal.
Yeah, and I don't know what the sentiment regarding tourism. I do know what the sentiment regarding tourism is of some of the other members of the township board. But I certainly think that tourism, I actually can't figure out why we don't have any tourism. Like, it's kind of silly, and we're essentially the Riviera of Southeast Michigan, so, but I guess that's probably a much more in-depth discussion for another time,
Yeah.
so.
Last thing I'm going to mention is that I'm trying to do more coordination with township departments and township staffs. So hopefully at least once a month, and I'll be trying to meet with Derek, our township manager, in order to just again let him know what's happening with BPAC. He can let me know what's happening with other parts of the township, and again see if there's a ways for synergies. I'm also going to be reaching out to the new DDA director. He had asked, he'd asked to to talk about this stuff, and then I'm sure that I'm just going to continue to reach out to other commissions. I'm happy to have others with me, with those if there's anybody that's interested. Don't need to do it alone, but
Yeah,
I just want to make sure it starts happening.
Okay.
That that concludes the chair's report. Is there anything else that we have to discuss before adjournment?
Good.
All right.
Motion to adjourn.
All right, all in favor? Aye. We adjourn at 8:55 p.m. Thank you, everyone. Walk, bike, drive safe.